Well, you know, if you've been around here for a while now, we have been walking through Philippians together, and we're doing that this summer, and just looking at several passages throughout this book. It's a great book of Paul's writing to the church at Philippi and just encouraging them. And we've been talking about this idea of contagious joy because joy is one of those things. It's often you see it, you know it when you see it. When somebody else has it, you can't help but desire it. And it's something when others, you get around others that just have joy, it's hard not to have joy as well too. It's hard not to feel excited. It's hard not to have that. I have other people in my life that, man, when I get around them, there's just something about them. I just like to be with them. And let's be real, we like to be around people that have joy, don't we? Because the other side's not very fun, is it? Like, we try to avoid that as much. And we got some of those in our life probably, don't we? Those people that when you walk in the room, you're just like, oh man, the temperature drops, and not in a good way. You know, and it's just like, everything in your countenance inside, and you're just like, oh man, here they are again. You know, the world's going to be ending. Things are going to be over soon. Their life's going to be terrible. Your life's going to be terrible. Everything around them is going, And there's it's like, nothing's good there, right? Or they're talking all about how, if I just had this, if I just had that, oh, my thing, if I didn't get this, that thing. And you just like, but when somebody has joy, you just can't help but want to be around them. You can't help but want to have some of what they have. And and you begin to often, your spirits lift. And so that's what I believe Paul is encouraging this church, especially in this moment, to be encouraged to find joy, not just in the good times. It's not just when everything's perfect and everything's going right, when it's up and to the right, or when things just seem to be going smooth and calm. No, it's joy even when sometimes the circumstances aren't so good. We talked about last week, we talked about joy and suffering, and actually that suffering is a gift. It's a gift that ultimately makes us more like Christ, and when we have it as a part of our life, when we get to experience it, we're actually identifying with Christ himself. Sometimes that's hard to think about. Or when we talked about a few weeks ago, we talked about joy and difficulty. We don't often think about difficult times being an opportunity for joy. A lot of times it's like, God, why am I here? And we try to figure out how to get out of the difficult time as quick as we can. But sometimes those moments are a gift. And it's actually those moments, God hasn't put things on pause, but God is actually in the season of preparation in our lives. Maybe preparation for the next thing. And so tonight, as we begin to consider this moment that we're going to look at. And if you've got a Bible, I want to invite you to grab one. If you don't have one, there's some on the table there in the back. We would love for you to take one and begin to read it. In Philippians chapter 2 is we're going to start at tonight. And I believe a really important passage. But I wanted you to just kind of consider maybe this question. Have you ever just seen somebody who just served joyfully without need of recognition? That they just served, and it just seemed like they had no desire. They didn't need anybody to tell them, hey, thanks, good job, that a boy, They just served, and they served with joy within them. They gave of themselves. And you probably can think about some people, and how, even in that, how did that impact you? That person that maybe served you in some way. They gave of themselves joyfully, excitedly. They didn't ask for anything in return. And how did that make you feel? How did that impact your life? And we can think often like maybe people that we've heard of, or famous people that just seem to serve. They didn't get into it necessarily for recognition or anything like that. We often think of people like Mother Teresa when we consider those things. We've talked about here before. You've talked about the person, Corrie ten Boom, how she just gave her life. She never desired, I don't think, to, be some famous author or anything like that. She just served others. She gave of herself to the point she hid Jews from being taken into concentration camps and ultimately found herself in that place as well. People like George Mueller, who started an orphanage and had literally ran a home with over 10,000 kids that had come through it in England, and never asked for any money, relying instead on God providing every step of the way. I think of another person who gave himself. You may have not heard of this person, but they're a really famous missionary named Hudson Taylor. And Hudson Taylor went to China and really adopted their culture rather than trying to push the British culture on them. They totally depended on God and prayed that God would provide for them. Literally gave of themselves completely and wholly without expecting anything in return. But what about on a personal level? What about on a personal level for you and for me? Who in your life do you know that's maybe served joyfully and with humility, and how it marked your life and maybe made a lasting impact for you? Not just somebody way out there, but somebody close. Maybe it was a coach that you had in high school or college or middle school. Maybe it was a teacher that invested in you. Because we all know teachers don't make a lot of money, but they gave of themselves. And because of that, you had opportunity, or they helped you through a difficult season. Maybe it was a boss that invested in you and encouraged you to take the next step. They served the company. They didn't just work for the company, but they literally served those around them. Maybe it was a friend or maybe even a parent. You watched them serve the Lord with great heart and strength and fervor. And it impacted you, and maybe that's why you're even here today. Because somebody gave of themselves. Somebody served others with great joy and with humility without something back. But let's be real, there's a tension often in this world. A world that's obsessed with status and platform and being right all the time. And yet Jesus, I believe we're going to see this evening, invites us into joy through something radically different, through humility. And I believe as many of us, we tend in our natural state, we naturally lean towards self-promotion and comparison. We compare what they have versus what we have. And Teddy Roosevelt said this, and you may have heard this statement before: comparison is the thief of joy. In our lives, it's often those moments when we begin to compare. It will take our joy. It's when we all of a sudden we begin to look at other people's stuff, and then what happens? We start to want their stuff, right? Or it starts to look at our stuff, and we begin to think, well, man, my stuff's not very good stuff. Or my life's not very good, comparably speaking, and we begin to compare, and it steals the joy that maybe of the contentment in a life of humility. Joy is often, I believe, crushed under the weight of pride and competition and even conflict. And Paul is speaking, we're going to see in just a moment, he is speaking to a church that things are going well. Things are generally good. But he knows for their joy to be full, their unity must be strong. They must be on the same path, in the same place, on the same path, in the same position. They have to remain strong together. And I believe, listen, unity doesn't come from agreeing on everything, but it comes from choosing humility. I don't know if you're aware of that, but did you know you will not always agree with the person next to you? Like, look at them right now. They may be your child, they may be a parent, they may be somebody you know, they may be a friend. The reality is you may not agree on everything. And if they are your child, you know that's true. If they're your parent, you know that's true. Because that's the reality of it. But when we choose to live in humility, it's amazing what things I believe can happen, that we can find joy even in moments where we may have struggle, even in the times where we may have strife. And I believe to know what real humility looks like, we must have a model. We must have some instruction of what this may look like, of what this is supposed to be. We come to a point in this passage in Philippians chapter 2, which is a central passage, I believe, to all the New Testament and probably even to the Scriptures, that gives us, I believe, the true prescription for a life of how we're to live as Christians in a world that is constantly pushing and pursuing and seeking self-promotion, self-gratification, self-elevation above all others. And yet Christ gives us a different thing. Paul gives us what we should really look like as followers. That it's much more than the next rung up the ladder. It's much more than just seeking the next big promotion. It's much more than self-gratification. It's much more than elevation of self or getting the next thing so that I have the better thing than the person next to me or the person around the corner or the person down the street. It's a much bigger thing than that. And we're going to see that this evening. And there's a call that we see, I believe, at the beginning of this passage for us in Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. And I want to read this together for just a moment. It says this, "And is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ?" He gives these series of questions. "Any comfort from his love? Any fellowship together in the Spirit? Are your hearts tender and compassionate?" Paul is appealing to their shared life in Christ. Any encouragement, any love, the Spirit in tenderness and compassion. If anything, listen, if any of that is true, then he says this in verse 2. "Then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and one purpose." He said, listen, if any of those things are true, those questions that he just listed off, if any of that is true, then make me truly happy. The NIV says it this way. Then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, and being in one spirit and one mind. He's saying, hey, if you want to fill my heart with joy today, if you want to, make my joy complete, and that means fully complete, not partially complete, fully complete. I remember being in a seminary class. I was in Greek class. Not that I'm very good at Greek, but I had to take it. And we were going through the book of Philippians. We had to literally translate the book of Philippians word for word. And we got to this passage. And I remember our professor, you may have been around here. I may have shared this story once before. But he gets to this point in this passage. And he begins to read it. And as he reads it, he starts and he goes, "And then make my joy complete." And the guy literally walks out of the room. We're thinking, somebody die? Did something happen? And he comes back and tears are literally streaming down his face. And he's like, "Do you guys get what this really means?" And we're obviously all going, "Evidently not." He's like, listen, the joy that this brings Paul in this moment is so overwhelming that it fully completes anything that he could ever imagine. And it won't be predicated on what the weather is like outside, who's in the office, who's king, anything else. His joy will be complete because they lived in one mind, in one heart, with the same love, being in one spirit together. And I believe joy and unity are tied up together in one. And just so we don't forget, and so you be reminded of this, because there will be moments where we, even as a church, where you may disagree with the person across the aisle or up the row. There may be a moment where you are like, well, why did they do that? Why did they do that? Why did they pick that song? Why did they do this? Or whatever. And that's okay. Because here's what you need to know, is unity is not uniformity, but instead it's alignment of heart and mission. It's, are we on the same page? Because here's what I know. We can like different things and still be aligned with the heart and the mission. We can have preferences about things and still be aligned in heart and mission. See, for my parents growing up in church, and you may remember this, there was a moment in time where music started to change in the church. They actually called it worship wars. And literally churches were being split over this. And the reality is, it's we thought that somehow we need to have uniformity to have unity. And the reality is you know what? Frank quite possibly may like different music than I like. Now, he's a pretty cool guy, so we probably have some similar taste. But the reality is, there are certain things we all like different here, right? But if we all align ourselves with the same mission, and we have the same heart for the mission, hey, I'll sing a song that you like in spite of my preference. Do you know, I think I've even shared this before, there's some songs that aren't my favorite, and we sing them because it's not about me. It's about the Lord and what He wants to do in and through us. And we will do things at times that sometimes we go, well, you know, it's for those people, it's for that person, it's for this group, because we want to bring honor and glory to God, and it's about the mission. It's about reaching people, discipling people. It's about making Jesus known one life at a time. And so there will be moments sometimes that was like, well, I don't really like it, but you know what? It's not ungodly. It's not off mission. It aligns with His Word. So it may not be my style, but if it's touching their heart or touching His heart, man, glory to God. And that is the call for all of us. That's the call as a church, that we would be truly courageous to do things that may challenge sometimes our own ideals or thoughts or ideas, because if it aligns with His, that's what matters most. If it aligns with the mission, and that's what we want to be on together. And so He says, hey, align yourself together, that we be like-minded, the same love, being in one spirit and one mind together. And then He goes on in verse 3. Sometimes I wish He would have left this part out, because it just made life a lot easier. But don't be selfish, it says. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. One translation says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. It's that idea that I don't just think about myself, but I think about those around me. I don't just think about me, but I think about the person next to me as well too. And that includes when we're out in the community, when we're in the city, when we're around town, when we're at work. Do the majority of our thoughts, are they about me and my interests, my desires, my plans? Or do I ever consider those that are around me? Their needs, their desires, their hopes, their dreams, the thing that God may want to do in and through them. That we consider those things. And it wouldn't be that we never think about ourselves, but instead we would also think about others. Don't just look to your own interest, but also the interest of others. Because joy isn't found in exalting ourselves, but I believe lowering ourselves for others. And you may want to remember this, that joy is found not in being above others, but in lifting others up. It's those moments when we go and we serve somebody. Let's be real. It's like if you've ever been on a mission. Has anybody ever been on a mission trip before? Or you've gone to serve in somewhere around the community or something like that? How much better do you feel after you do that? Man, there's something about it when you begin to serve other people. When you look out for others' needs, there's a joy within you that oftentimes it's hard to even explain. It's hard to explain to those people that didn't go on the trip, right? Or didn't go to the soup kitchen, or didn't go to the food pantry. It's hard to explain because we just have this joy that wells up when we serve others. Because joy is not found in just elevating ourselves, but it's really when we lift others up. When we serve those in need, joy is found there. Joy is found in that moment. And then Paul lays out the great model and picture of Jesus. I believe one of the most powerful passages in the New Testament. And he says this in verse 5. And you must have the same attitude as that of Christ Jesus had. We're supposed to have the same attitude as Jesus? That seems hard. That can even seem something overwhelming. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, it says, he gave up his divine privilege. He took the humble position of a slave, and he was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in what? Obedience to God, and died a criminal's death on the cross. Like he took on flesh, looked like us, acted like in our bodies, the same way, just like us, on skin and bones, flesh, and humbled himself. To die a criminal's death on the cross. Not to live as a king, not to live as one in opulence, in the mansion, in the White House. No, but instead, he lowered himself like us and died a death of a criminal in obedience. Like, he chose that way. And it says, then, therefore, because of all this, because of the way he lived, because of what he chose, because of what he does, because of his obedience, because of the death, in that, therefore, it says, God elevated him to the place of what honor? Highest honor. It elevated him to the highest honor and gave him the name that was above all other names. And that the name of Jesus, every knee should what? Bow. In heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue would what? Declare that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So here we get the picture of Jesus, who deserved to be hailed as King. All hail King Jesus, right? We sang that. That's what he deserved. Triumphant King here on earth. That's what, if anybody deserved it, it was him. Perfect life. And yet he chose to live a life to take on the form of humans, of us, and give his life in one of the most brutal ways possible of that day. And die. A death that he did not deserve. But yet obedience took him there. Jesus had every right to exalt himself, but instead he chose to lower himself. He didn't cling to the status, but instead he chose to surrender. He chose obedience. He emptied himself and became a servant. He humbled himself to death, even death on the cross. Our King chose the cross and not a throne. But God exalted him, that both every knee would bow and every tongue would declare that Jesus Christ is Lord. So I don't care what person resides wherever they may reside, who's king in what nation, no matter who's held, what platform they may have, no matter what position you may have, no matter what position someone else has held above us or below us, that the reality is that one day, it says, every knee will bow in heaven and earth before the Lord. Like, do you get that? Like, that is our King. I don't care what someone may do. I don't care what someone may say. I don't care. Every knee will bow in heaven and earth. And every tongue will confess that He is Lord for the glory of God. And I believe that for us, joy flows when we follow the downward path of Jesus, because it's pouring ourselves out that we're filled up. It's when we begin to choose the way of Christ, not to elevate ourselves up, but instead of, like in John 13, when He lowered Himself down at the feet of His disciples and He washed their feet. As He washed those who would betray Him, those who would deny Him. The reality is, for some of us in the room, if you just ask to, if even to the thought of washing your best friend's feet seems a little disgusting, right? Don't look around at anybody, but it does, seems a little awkward. And you may do it just because you like them. Because you're like, oh, I just want them to know how much I care about them. I want to show them what servanthood looks like. But could you imagine washing the person who hates you? Could you imagine bending down and touching one of the grossest parts? Because let's be real, most of our feet, nobody's got to take off their shoes today. Your feet are ugly. So are mine. It's okay. It's true. It's true. We got nasty feet. I don't care how. I don't care what kind of. I don't care. They are their feet. Okay. But the thought, like, okay. Like, I'm gonna bend down and wash the foot of somebody who hates my guts. No, thank you. But yet that's what Jesus did. The people that would deny Him, the people that would turn Him over, the person that He would wash their feet. And yet I believe that is our calling as well. And I don't think that's a downgrade when we serve in that way. I truly believe that's an upgrade to joy. A joy that no one can take it away, that we would serve people even when they don't deserve it, that we would get down our hands and knees. And it may not be that we get down thankfully today and wash their feet, but we would look for opportunities to serve them, maybe make them a meal. Maybe reach out to them. Maybe just talk to them. Ask them how their day's going. Maybe it's sitting down and having a conversation with somebody whose maybe lives, and you may not even realize their life has fallen apart, and all of a sudden they lay it out before you. And for them, that's the greatest way you could serve them that day. Maybe it is that you go to a homeless shelter and you give of yourself once a week. Maybe it's that you look for an opportunity to just love somebody that's hard to love. Care for somebody who's can be sometimes hard to care for, because let's be real, there's oftentimes we're kind of hard to care for and hard to love at times too. And yet Jesus lowered Himself, became a human being just like us, and died the criminal's death in obedience. But God exalted Him. And do you know, one day we will leave this earth and we will go and reside with Him in heaven. And I believe this is the pathway that we would follow of Jesus. And I believe that path leads to contagious joy. And it is paved through a life lived in humility. that we would follow this same path. Because what looked like losing, the reality is He won. He won the victory for me and you. He won the victory today. And I believe we get to be a part of that. We get to share that with others. And so maybe for you, you would just consider for the next few moments, where are you fighting to be first? Or more important? Or maybe to be right? Is it in your marriage? Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's even on social media. But what would it look like if you begin to pour out yourself this week to others? To serve somebody who couldn't repay you? What about apologize first? Or maybe just give to somebody without being thanked. I love what Rick Warren wrote in The Purpose-Driven Life. It says, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. See, humility, it's not just about thinking, it's not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. And I believe that is the pathway to contagious joy. It's paved with that life of humility. When we live out the life of humility, I believe it can't help but others. It's contagious to others as well, too. And could you imagine for a moment what it would look like for our church to be full of people who would outdo one another, to serve each other, to show up to serve, not just to be served, but to give themselves and to give of themselves. I believe that kind of church, it radiates joy. And that kind of joy and love is contagious. And I challenge us to consider, how could we pour ourselves out this week in humility? And our prayer, our invitation this week could just be this: Jesus, make me more like you. Teach me to lower myself and fill me with joy as I lift others up. And what would happen if you and I began to pray that every day for the next 7 days? Jesus, help me be more like you, and teach me to lower myself and fill me with joy so I can lift others up. I just wonder what might happen. And I believe it starts by looking at the author and the perfecter of our faith, the one who at his name every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. Because it's there we get our example. It's there we find life. And I believe it is in that we have joy, and in humility we can share it with the world. And it's a contagious joy. His name is powerful. His name is glorious. His name is beautiful. And my challenge and encouragement to all of us, let us never get tired of the name that is above every name. Let us never take that name for granted, but that every time we hear that name, our hearts and lives would be filled with joy because of the humility that we have, recognizing that all that I have is because of Him, because of that great name, because of that sacrifice, because of His obedience. It's because of that I can spend my life in service to others, to lift others up, and to live a life of service for Him.